Hi, and welcome to the Maze channel, a platform where we unpack management and leadership challenges. I'm your host, Tabo Moalus. If you are new here, please consider subscribing and hit the notification button so as you'll get informed whenever new videos get posted. Let us now navigate the leadership and management maze by diving deep into today's topic. In this episode, we will be unpacking crisis. All organizations go through some sort of a crisis from time to time. It is not a question of if it happens, but when it happens. As I stated in the preceding episodes, we are governed by chaos, which leads to crisis. Two scenarios might happen whereby a plan for crisis occurs or unplanned for crisis occurs. The most common crisis is the one that is unplanned for. In this episode, we will look at common characteristics of crisis. We will also look at how to avoid it. Should it come to pass, how to mitigate its impact. First, we need to understand what is crisis. When one talks about crisis, the following come to mind: catastrophe, calamity, disaster, predicament, upheaval, emergency, trouble, dilemma, etc. All this might lead to chaos if not addressed correctly and timelessly. But what is crisis? According to Oxford Dictionary, crisis is a time of great danger, difficulty, or doubt when problems must be solved or important decisions must be made. As I stated earlier, crisis can be planned for as well as unplanned for. Plan for crisis is when an organization gets proactive by preparing for a possible crisis happening. At times, organizations prepare for a possibility of a crisis by having a crisis management function that anticipates it. The team is normally headed by a coordinator and tasked to work out contingency plans to arrest such eventualities. Thus, it must look out for signs of imminent crisis and put plans in place to mitigate it. This is by no means an easy task, as crisis is multi-layered as well as being multidimensional. Generally, crisis is brought about by internal and/or external factors. But not all crises can be planned for. Even if it's planned for, that is not a guarantee that it can be avoided. Unplanned for crisis will inevitably occur despite well laid out plans by an organization. The following are typical crises that can affect an organization. 1. Technological crisis. This might be brought about by, for an example, an improved innovations by competitors which lead to a loss in the market share for an organization. It could be led to by system failures or server crashes, or an industrial accident such as chemical spillage, burns, explosions, or fires. 2. Natural crisis which affects the running of an organization. For an example, hurricanes, tsunamis, and earthquakes. 3. Staff or personnel crisis, such as a death or sudden resignation of a key employee, such as a director, or leadership acting unethically, thus exposing the organization to unnecessary litigations, or strikes and boycotts against the organization. 4. Financial crisis, which might be due to rampant inflation or sudden change in market share, or even bankruptcy. Other causes might be sabotage and cyber attacks. Crisis usually goes through 4 stages, which are: 1. Mitigation phase. 2. Preparation phase. 3. Response phase. 4. Recovery phase. Mitigation phase is basically a potential crisis stage whereby a crisis casts its shadow. Oftentimes, organizations, having heard rumors of a potential crisis, set up a crisis team. This risk management team will be headed by a coordinator and it is expected to prepare for possible scenarios. A communication strategy will then be formulated. At this stage, communications will be largely preemptive as nothing is definite as yet. The next stage will be preparedness stage, which is at times referred to as latent stage. This is when signs of a crisis are becoming more visible, thus enabling imminent crisis to be clearly identified. Strategies are devised based on the now known facts and are no longer based on speculations. There is a possibility of preventing crisis at this stage through the implementation of plans. Constant communication with stakeholders is vital at this stage to avert panic. The third stage is response phase, which is an acute stage of crisis whereby it is at its peak. This is when crisis response plans get implemented as new information emerges daily. The organization will triage agent and pressing issues. By triaging, we mean prioritizing agent issues to be sorted out first, considering limited resources. A crisis is acutely felt at this stage. The last phase will be recovery phase, which is a post-crisis stage. Crisis is over and the organization evaluates the impact. The organization will plan for future possible crises based on the evaluation, considering all inputs from all stakeholders. With insights gained, the organization will ditch the triage decision making and make improved long-term decisions. This is also a time when organizations begin fulfilling the commitments they made while in a crisis. The above is some of the things that will be expected from a well-functioning organization. But as we know that not all organizations are healthy, some will fail to do the above. Let us look at what typically happens in a toxic environment when crisis strikes. And we will juxtapose it with what we already mentioned. Now that we dealt with a typical reaction towards a crisis by a healthy organization, let's look at how the toxic organization typically responds to such. The first phase of crisis under a healthy organization is mitigation stage, whereby crisis casts its shadow. In a toxic organization, that will be a denial stage. Denial stage is whereby management dismisses rumors of an imminent crisis without investigation. This could be due to laziness, ineptitude, corruption, or just trying to wish undesirables away. Leaders bury their heads in the sand just like a proverbial ostrich and hope that a threat will go away. A strange thing is that these leaders end up really believing their misconceptions that there is no real threat. Their default refrain when asked about the rumors of a potential crisis will be a dismissive, threats? What threats? There are no threats. This inaction or indecisiveness results in a missed opportunity to prepare for a crisis. The second phase of a crisis in a healthy organization is preparedness stage, where signs are visible. In a toxic organization, that will be a cover-up stage. A cover-up stage is when signs of an imminent crisis are visible. Leadership will then be embarrassed by their earlier stance that there were no real threats of a crisis. It will then resort to damage control by conducting a cover-up plan instead of an action plan. Leadership realized that it not only lost the opportunity to prepare, but have lost a control of the narrative. Junior managers are instructed to lie to other stakeholders about what is really happening. Morale is low due to poor communication and conflicting reports, as not all people are good liars. Some are bound to slip up. The energy that is supposed to be utilized to prepare for the mitigation or aversion of crisis is misdirected. All is not lost at this stage for a toxic organization, but egos normally get in the way of doing the right things. The third stage of a crisis in a healthy organization will be that of a response stage. This is when an organization is in the midst of a crisis. For a toxic organization, that will be a blame apportioning stage. A blame apportioning stage is when a crisis is no longer a speculation but a reality. This is the acute stage of a crisis, and new information comes in daily, if not hourly. This flood of information helps to further refute earlier assertions of leadership that there is no imminent danger. People are embarrassed, and heads start to roll with some people being fired or demoted. In a case of serious dereliction of duties by leadership, with the resultant loss of lives or injury sustained, some are even arrested. Scapegoating and blame shifting are the order of the day, as no one wants to end up with an egg in his face. The organization will lose credibility and trust of other stakeholders. A new leader or leadership might be appointed. The last stage of crisis for a healthy organization will be that of recovery, which is basically a post crisis stage. For a toxic organization, that will be an overcompensation stage. Overcompensation is when crisis is over and the organization wants to cushion the battering it suffered. As I stated, a new leader or leadership is appointed to try and reverse stakeholders' trust deficit. Organization might have to deal with disgruntled employees that are feeling hard done by management's incompetence and betrayal. There might be a flood of litigations against the organization, as some people might opt to sue it. Amidst all of this, the new leadership might be stifled in their pursuit of regaining lost ground. In most cases, new leadership will fear backlash from stakeholders should they implement strict policies. Leadership might opt to please all by allowing wrongdoing to go on unabated. People end up doing as they please, with leadership being paralyzed and thus doing nothing about it. If this is not addressed soon, the organization will find itself back at stage one of a crisis process. This will be a denial stage. It will therefore dismiss claims of anarchy by denying it, and the cycle repeats itself. Now that we dealt with crisis, I would like you to identify a crisis, whether past or present, and juxtapose it with the above. Please leave your comments on the comment section below. I trust you found the information shared on this platform to be useful. Please like and share this video with others so as they can derive the same benefits. Be on the lookout for more exciting videos. And remember, never deprive the world of the best version of yourself. Bye for now.